everyone. Welcome to another episode of the WIT podcast. It's kind of fun. I have a guest on the show today that I've only met once. We met in person in New York City, and she came through in the 11th hour. So that says something about her, just telling you right there. In regards to this event that I was hosting in New York City, it was a hackathon. And we wanted judges, and I heard about her through a friend of the pod, Gigi Robinson, and Gigi made the intro. And the next thing I know, Danielle was there and added so much value to the teen entrepreneurs and their ideas and their proposals as a judge. And it's been a little bit of like a long time coming for me to want to find ways to reconnect with her. And she recently was posting on LinkedIn. If you're not following her on LinkedIn yet, make sure you follow her, Danielle Farage, Farage, right? I mean, that's how they'd find you. Exactly. And you can definitely follow her on LinkedIn because she puts out really great content. And that's a long way of me saying that is why I invited her on the podcast. I was really enjoying the content that she was putting out on LinkedIn, and I thought it'd be really valuable for all of you that tune into this podcast and who, just are looking for those tips in life, because all of you are like in different transitions in your life, whether it's getting back to school or back to, college is school, but back to college, back to work if you had a summer vacation. And so I just wanted to bring her in. So welcome to the show, Danielle. I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and virtually joining the conversation from Israel.
That's
a little bit different from
that's what I was going to ask if you were still there. How's that trip going? I've always wanted to go. I've heard wonderful things about Israel. I'm a fan of Israel. And so I am, how's it going? How's that trip?
Amazing. I'm actually a dual citizen of Israel and the US. So my dad is actually an immigrant. He moved to the US when he was 20 years old from Israel, and he grew up in a small town called Petah Tikva, which is kind of not so affluent of a neighborhood, or it wasn't at the time. And I've been coming here a lot since I was little, and it's cool when you grow up. I'm saying grown up, I'm 25, full disclosure. But when you grow up, you have your own sort of finances, and you can choose to spend them in different ways. And so one of the things I'm really grateful for as I'm here just for about a month is just the ability to spend my money where I want to, and like do what's best for me, right? And make those decisions. And so I came here actually originally on a program called Tamid, and TAMID. So Tamid is a nonprofit, and it's a club that is at, I think, 80 something universities across the world. And essentially you join it like, while you're in college, and you consult for Israeli startups during the year. And then for one summer, you get to actually go to Israel for 2 months, all paid for. And you work for an Israeli company or a company that has an office here. So some are like Deloitte, some are, bigger companies.
I was going to say, let's pause here for a second, because I want to educate our audience on just how much innovation comes out of Israel. I don't think that people understand that, and how many incredible startups and just inventions that come from Israel. So I think that's really cool that you get to be part of that ecosystem and involved in that. That's really interesting.
Yeah. And I'll just briefly shout out why. So Israel is known as a startup nation. There's a book all about it. You can look it up. It's literally called Startup Nation. And it really explains, it goes into detail, why is this, random small country the size of New Jersey, in the Middle East, why is it so innovative? How, right? And Israel, there's really no other industry here beyond tech, because there was nothing here once upon a time. And so if you haven't learned about Israel, you haven't learned anything about, the tech ecosystem here, I highly recommend the book Startup Nation. Also, there's one called Anything But Water, I imagine, I think it's called. But yeah, so they have an alumni network that they're starting to re-engage, and I'm part of it. And so I applied to go on this 5-day exploration of Israeli startups and VCs and accelerators that are based in Israel, in a number of different towns. So there was Tel Aviv, there's Herzliya, there's Jerusalem, there's Beersheba. And Beersheba specifically is really interesting because it's a desert, it's essentially in the desert. And 10 years ago, where there's this huge tech hub with 300 companies, a lot of them US companies that you would know, like IBM, and Google, they have offices there. And it's essentially like, briefly, like 10 years ago, the government decided that they wanted to create a tech hub outside of Tel Aviv, because people generally that live in the South aren't super well off. And a lot of the kids are, of they're of like different sects of, people who live in Israel. So a lot of them are Bedouins, and typically Bedouins live in like tents, like they live in a nomadic way.
Okay.
Yeah. And so this was an effort by the government to say, hey, we want to sort of change lives, and make things a little bit more equitable and provide opportunities where there traditionally haven't been many. And so they decided where there's this university called Menachem Begin University, they decided to also put a new IDF unit that's focused on cybersecurity, and then also create.
What does IDF stand for?
Hub. IDF is the Israeli Defense Forces. Yeah, thank you for that. And so they're essentially creating this talent pipeline where people go, if you don't know, people go to the army. If you live in Israel, you go to the army when you graduate high school for 2.5 years. And you're assigned to a unit.
No matter if you're a boy or a girl.
No matter boy or girl, you go to the army. There's specific exceptions for groups, for like minority groups in Israel, like some Orthodox Jews that do other types of service and volunteering. But essentially, yeah, you go to the army usually if you are born in Israel, and then they created a talent pipeline where if you're in this unit that's focused on cybersecurity, then you're basically guaranteed a job at one of these 300 companies that's right there, within walking distance. And you also get opportunities while if you study, if you go to university after the army, which not everyone does, but some people do, then you also can intern at those companies. So there's there's just so much opportunity where there used to not be. And sorry for the long.
Well, no, don't apologize,
because I think it's interesting.
I think it's really interesting too. And I do think that, and this is just because as somebody who is in great support of Israel and I post things in support of Israel, I just know that even given the responses that I get from those posts, a lot of people aren't educated on Israel, or even in the startup space, I feel like people don't quite understand as entrepreneurs just how much, even like of even the products that they're using on a daily basis, that technology, that innovation came from Israel. So I just think it's really interesting to do that. It just it puts more color and more reality into what people's perception are of a place on our planet. And I also think what's really interesting about that I would want to say is a good example for people that are listening, that are wanting to start things and wanting to help people and see an area that needs support or systems. What it sounds like what Israel did was they actually went to the place and they built something there in order to serve people there. And I think a lot of times this is what I see in especially the nonprofit space or in a give back space. It'll sound like this. It'll say, we have this program, and I'll just use New York as an example, on the Upper East Side, and you can go there every Saturday and you can get access to this education or these programs or these things. And then they're offering it to people who it would probably take like 2 hours to get there. And then they'd have to spend money to get there. Or even if they said, oh, we'll cover your Metro pass or whatever, it's still it still costs some time. And I think that that's just something as entrepreneurs that we should always be thoughtful of when we're saying we want to help people. and we want to serve a community, is going to that community and like asking what they need. Obviously, there had to have been conversations about building what they built there, and would people even take those jobs if they were given, or opportunities if they were given? And it sounds like they realized that they would. So therefore they moved forward in Israel and created this. But I think this is something to think about and tie into what we talk about here on the podcast, which is when you want to be of service to people and you want to help a community, there's ways to help at others, and then there's ways to feel good about yourself. And you want to find a place where those meet, not just, oh, I feel so good about myself that I've created this give back or created this program. So you went there for 5 days, but you've been there longer because I follow you on Insta. So and I follow you on LinkedIn. So tell us what happened, what's been happening.
Yeah. And that's such a great point, by the way, about going to the place. So I've been here for about a month, 3 weeks after the program, because I really just wanted to travel and be abroad. Like I said before, like you can choose, where to spend your money and like financial independence. That's like really cool. But also because Israel is a place that I always envisioned working from and living. And so I wanted to try it out. Like I was when I was in New York and we met, I had been subletting in Brooklyn. So I'm subleasing, or, I was paying to stay at someone's apartment for about 4 months because I wanted to try out Brooklyn. And so now this was my chance to try out Israel for a little. I planned to work remotely for the company I was working for, but in May, at the end of May, I got laid off. So that was an unexpected happening that, occurred. And then I had this trip planned and it kind of just worked out in the end. And so in 2 days, I'll go to Croatia for an annual vacation with my 2 best friends. And then following that, I'll go to France and meet with my mom and meet my new baby cousin who was born on my birthday. So that's exciting.
That's fun.
But yeah, my time in Israel has been spent it's kind of been very dynamic, which I really like. So the first week post program, I really just chilled at the beach, to be honest. I was like meeting people, we were out 8, 10, 12 hours a day. And then we would go out together as like, the people in the program, just have fun until 4 a.m. and wake up at like 8 and like go visit and meet companies. So it was a lot. It was intense. And then the following week, I started to get back on my computer and just kind of see, okay, like I hired a speaking coach. So, just trying to figure out like, what are my next steps with that, and returning, to the emails and all that and settling back in. And then this past, last week, I went to Dubai to actually have a one-on-one day with my coach where we sort of mapped out what my next 2 weeks looks like. And then this week I've just been, doing what we planned and just kind of, executing.
Well, I've got a lot of follow-up questions to that. And as always, I want to just remind the audience, because they might be new, is that I don't send questions ahead of time at the podcast. People log into the Zoom, and I even try to say, like, don't even say anything. Let's try to just like save everything for the podcast. So I just want you to know that I'm also like learning about people in real time and what's going on with them, which I just enjoy that type of conversation versus a more planned conversation. So I want to ask some follow-up questions to that, because I do think if you're comfortable with it, I think addressing the layoff is really powerful and important, because I know that I have a friend that was working at a really big company and she got laid off, and she's been calling me. We've probably been talking like every other week, and just to kind of help her process the feelings that are coming up around it. Because I've been laid off. I've actually been laid off 4 times when I was a teacher, which eventually led to me starting WIT, because that's a lot to be laid off that many times. And sometimes it happens for budget cuts. That's what my situation was. Sometimes it happens just for multiple reasons, but it doesn't matter how it happens. The feeling is pretty consistent. It can bring up a lot of self-doubt. It can bring up a lot of a mixture, at least for me. It was like, I don't think I ever felt relief. Now, I will say I have heard from people who have been laid off from really toxic work environments that they were like, I never was going to leave. And so this makes me leave. For me, I loved my job as a teacher, and it was toxic, but I was willing to put up with it because of how much I loved the kids. Now, of course, it's easy for me to say, I'm so grateful that happened because I wouldn't have started WIT, but in real time, are you kidding me? I was like, what? I'd already left a career in film and TV to go into education. And so I think talking about how you're processing that, or tips that you can share, because you're a little further out. I mean, still new, but you are a little further out as you've got a game plan for your next steps. But for the person who's listening that might be going through that, or even for the teen who's listening, who keeps being told by parents or by adults, like, if you choose this path or you go to this school, you're going to be fine. It's not true. Life has so many twists and turns. Danielle could do all the quote right things in high school and she can still get laid off as an adult. And then what? Like, that's when you have to pull from your resilience and your grit and your fortitude, which is why we talk about that so much at WIT. So what you're comfortable sharing, the mic is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, I resonated with so much of that. Yeah. The thing that I will say is, if you are going through it, it's like kind of like going through, it's kind of the same things as grief, like that
for
you
sure.
have the same feelings of first shock, then rejection, and then anger, and then sadness, and then kind of confusion of like, what does this mean? Like, where am I? Who am I? And then you start to process it and like really pick up the pieces. And I'll say, personally, within 2 weeks of being laid off, I was then invited to a roundtable with the mayor of New York City and a bunch of other experts to talk about the hiring challenges that the city's going through. And so that really helped boost, my ego a little bit, because it was definitely hurting. And a few weeks later, I then sat in a female co-working space, speaking about my layoff and talking about how do you actually handle it and handle transitionary periods in your life. And I think what I'm going to say is really relevant to any transition that you're going through. And that is, it's important to work on yourself so that you're strong, your mindset is strong, so that you can navigate any challenge, any high or any low that comes your way. Because even when the highs come, right, they're always preceded by the lows. They're always followed by the lows, because it's the natural progression of things, right? You get an A on a test and you're super excited, and then 2 days later you're like, oh wait, my teacher just told me I have a test in another 2 weeks. Like, oh my gosh. And it's kind of back to, square one. And you're unable maybe to relive or remember that high that you experienced when you got that grade, and you have to wait again. And so I'll say, like, when I graduated about a year after, I was navigating this point in time of like deciding if I should stay at a job that I likely wouldn't have liked, because it was very limiting, and I didn't like the team, that I'd met, and the company I worked for was getting acquired. So I had the option of staying at that company. And then my other option was this really interesting and cool startup that reached out to me that was aligned with where I wanted to focus in my career, which was on the employee experience at work. And they reached out and they said, oh, we want to hire you. And it was a remote role, so I wouldn't be going to an office. It was a very small team. It was a very early stage company. Like they, didn't have a lot of repeatable customers, and it was a risk.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing was that it was offering travel and adventure and
Mm-hmm.
a seat at the table and like unlimited opportunity, it seemed like, and a higher salary, I might add. And so I had these two things, and I was really confused. I was at this point, so sort of, uh, resembling where I had been a year earlier when I was deciding whether or not to leave a toxic job, which I've been
Mm-hmm.
there too.
Mm-hmm.
And so at this point, I said to myself, I need help. I didn't go to a therapist. I went to a mindset coach, and I invested, the biggest investment to that date was that mindset coach and working with her one-on-one to figure out, okay, like even leaving out this very big decision, it seemed, how could we get Danielle to a place where no matter what's going on in her life, the ups, the downs,
Mm-hmm.
the kind of average day, she felt like she, was consistently good and solid,
Mm-hmm.
and where her mindset was good. And that was a pivotal moment in my life when I decided to invest in myself. I think it's something that is under talked about. Where you decide to spend your money,
Mm-hmm.
money is generally under talked about.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And yeah, and with that, like the value of our time and all that stuff. But that
Oh
was a
yeah,
pivotal
that's
moment.
making me think of, oh wait, that's making me think of that LinkedIn post that you made, and then I commented on it. Wait, remember you talked about that, like people wanting you to speak for free
Oh,
or for
exposure doesn't pay
exposure.
the bills.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I wrote like,
Yeah.
just to always be like another perspective. It's true. And sometimes things can get you more exposure by saying yes to them. But
Hmm.
I knew what you were talking about. That's a whole,
Yeah.
yeah, we could do a podcast on people wanting my hourly rate. And I'm like, I don't have an hourly rate. This is my flat fee. Like, this is my fee.
Hmm.
And and I share that with people because I'm able to do things faster than I was able to do them when I was younger.
Right.
And I've been able to like execute something in a more rapid way due to the connections that I have now that I didn't have when I was younger. Or even that age has nothing to do with it, just like my life and my expertise. And so when somebody wants to pay me by the hour, I'm like, but I could literally probably get that done in 15 minutes in terms of like making a connection or doing something. And that's actually really valuable that I can do it that. And it's because it's the years of building a network and putting myself out there and doing that. So no, there's not like a breakdown of my hourly rate.
Hmm.
And that served me well. That's not for everybody, but that serves me well now versus for an hourly rate. But I did a tangent. Let's get back to what you were saying.
All good. Yeah. Just to close the loop, like
Yeah.
the like the thing that, the reason I was okay, basically, within, 2 weeks of the layoff, um, which relates to like me sitting in that co-working space. There is this
Mm-hmm.
employment lawyer in the audience, and at the end of the conversation, she raises her hand, and I was so intrigued by her because she was kind of like the only person who hadn't said anything. And she said, when I have conversations with people about layoffs, like I have to be the one to actually break the news to them. And what I've noticed is that the people who take it the worst are often the people who attach their identities to work,
Mm.
versus the people who take it like the best, right? And I would put myself in this category for this past layoff, are the people who have something else that they're super passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason why I had something I was super passionate about is because when I left that toxic job, when I decided to leave and to go take that new opportunity, what I also did was I looked at my life and I said, what's the story that I want to tell?
Mm-hmm.
And from there, I took my power back. I looked at my toxic workplace experience and I said, oh, I want the world to be a better place for young professionals, for
Mm-hmm.
them to not be taken advantage of, for them to learn how to use their voice, to find their confidence. And when I had that opportunity to be confident in that decision that I was making between staying at a job and leaving and taking a new job. It was that investment in myself that I was like, oh, like in order to be the person that I want to be and to tell the story from a unique perspective, I have to invest in myself in a way that will make me that hero in my own story. And it paid off. 3 years later from that toxic job, I'm now speaking internationally, and I'm becoming that voice of my generation around the topic of the future of work. And we can get into that as well. But yeah, I kind of a long story, but it kind of like makes a lot of sense. When you look at it, hindsight is 2020.
Sure.
But yeah, I would say that the main thing with the layoff that happened was I felt more in control than I expected. And I felt more okay than I expected, than anyone would expect probably after a layoff, because I had something that I was passionate about, that I was already pursuing outside of work.
Well, I think that the way that could really connect to, especially the young people that are listening, that are these young entrepreneurs or developing their work through WIT or even outside of WIT, would be that those skills that you're developing around being able to handle rejection well, when you send that email and the person doesn't write you back and they say that or the person does write you back and says, I don't want to be on your podcast, or no, I'm not going to donate $500 for your thing, or no, I'm not going to buy your bracelet, or I'm not going to buy your product. Every time that you handle that rejection without taking it so personally, you are developing this muscle in you that really isn't getting worked in school. Now, of course, you can get rejected in school, right? You can get rejected from programs. You can get rejected by someone that you like in a social situation, but that's fine. Then those are things that you are experiencing for sure in your high school life or in your elementary school life, whatever, in your school life. But the idea of putting yourself into situations where you are going outside of your immediate circle, like outside of school. And so you're launching your WIT business, or you already have a podcast that you've been running, and things aren't going as well as you want them to. And yet you still put in the time on a Saturday, or you still like handle the rejection from the person who says they don't want to come on as a guest. And you just go send another email without even knowing it. Really, you're preparing yourself for situations that are going to happen when you're older, where you experience things like this, like a layoff, or you don't get the promotion, or you don't get this thing. And instead of having it just like rock you to your core, because before that moment, you'd never experienced anything like not going your way, which you don't want to be a fragile person. Like you don't want to be somebody that's too fragile and too precious. That's not good. You want to be able to take the bumps and take the hits and or block the hits, right? We're like, okay, that's fine. Like it's not a fit. It's not a fit. I know I already have things that I can do, because I've been, since 13 years old, I've been turning my ideas into reality. That's why at WIT, it's so important that our young people execute their ideas and don't just talk about them, because talk is boring when it comes to entrepreneurship for me. The execution of an idea is where you start developing these muscles that Danielle's talking about, that when she was sitting in that room, or it was over the phone, or however that happened for you, of course you had the normal reactions, right? Those feelings, but they didn't take you out for 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, and make you feel like you just weren't worth anything, or you didn't have any value to add. The more you can add to your database, these flowers keep falling. If you're watching on YouTube, like my tulips are like falling apart in the background because of my hand gestures. So typical. I'm like
That's
talking
so
with my
funny.
hands.
I love them though. Pretty.
And they're on their last leg, but okay. The more you can develop starting at a young age, this muscle, it just makes life better. I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about, Danielle, because even when I was getting the layoffs when I was a teacher, I was so confident that what I was doing was good. Like I was a great teacher, just the system was what it was. That I was willing to say, okay, if not in this way, what way can I use these gifts and talents? Because I know I have these gifts and talents. Just like you might realize, you have a gift and talent around speaking, especially on a specific topic. So maybe it's not going to look like how you thought. Can I be open to it looking differently? Can I like release my how hold I was, if I was holding on real tight to it, like looking a certain way, can I release that a little bit to let in what might be a better place for me to use my gifts and my talents? That's how WIT started for me. It sounds like that's also what happened with you, is that you went into, you became proactive. You're like, okay, this isn't working, but I've already have this thing on the side. Now maybe I'm just going to make that more full-time and push that into the front and then make an investment in that and then keep going. So do you feel like your next career move or your current career move is not going to work for a company again, but instead building out your speaking career?
Yeah. Hold on. 1 second, because someone's knocking at the door and I
Okay, that's
have
fine.
no idea who it is.
This happens on the YouTube. Things will happen and people
Okay.
have to like, it's so funny. I guess if you're on uh YouTube right now, you can just let this run and then go follow her on LinkedIn.
I literally have no idea who is like at the door knocking and now they're not there. No idea.
Okay, well, if
Okay.
it happens again, no worries. Just let us know, and then
Okay.
we can, because that would be like annoying in
Yeah.
the background. I would think it'd be hard for me to stay
I
present
was
if
like,
that was
what?
happening.
I
Okay,
tried my
so
hardest, but I think what you were saying was so on point. But without revealing too much
mhm,
about my next, like what you're saying is on point, right? It's like you are what I ask myself ultimately is this question of like, what story do I want to tell? Right. And I think
mhm,
that was a really good question to ask myself when it came to choosing the right school, university. I went to USC, but both my siblings had also gone to USC. So, what was the story I wanted to tell about why I went to USC,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
Making it my own place, my own, launch pad for my own career. Um, it was the question I asked myself when I sat down to do a Benjamin Franklin, which is like a list where you say, here are the pros of this, here are the cons of this. And when I was leaving my toxic job, it was, what's the story I want to tell, right? Am I
mhm,
going to stay for my mental health to get worse, or am I going to leave for my mental health to get better? And ultimately, what happened was I landed a job 3 weeks later through my high school friend
mhm,
at an awesome startup that ended up being probably the best experience under a manager. Um, and it was also the question that I asked myself, along with, post layoff, along with, in the future, when I look back at this point in time in my
mhm,
life, will I wonder what if? And do I want to allow myself to be able to say what if, right?
mhm,
And to wonder, because one of the things I think I've learned is, if you don't do it now, you're always going to wonder what if it's something that you really want to do, if you really care about, you're going to wonder what if. So it's better to do it and learn and fail than to not do it at all. And
I
when I
totally
close
agree.
my eyes, yeah, when I close my eyes and I imagine like my biggest dream in life, it's to become a speaker. And so if I've had a certain amount of traction the past 3 years and I'm building my brand as a speaker on the side, then I should answer this question. I want to answer this question that I've always wondered while I was at my former job, which was, what if I did this full time? What would
Mhm,
that look like? And so I've given myself a certain period of time with the help of a coach to determine, well, in the next 6 months, here's your goal.
mhm, that's great.
And if you hit your goal, then keep going. But if not, then maybe you get a full-time job. But
Mhm.
ultimately, I have to look at like what I value right now in my life. And currently it's not working for anyone else.
I think that's really important to acknowledge that there's different seasons and times for everything in your career and even in your life. I can think of no better time than in your 20s to be making those adjustments and making those changes and taking those leaps. I mean, I had a career in my 20s that's different than what I had in my 30s, and then what's different, like they're not the same, what I've been doing. Now, if I can look back and I can see the thread that connects them all, sure. But I think I would even encourage people to ask that question, like, what is the story that I want to tell? And what value do I want to bring? And what value can I bring? Because that is such a powerful, it shifts. Like, so for example, as somebody who's been laid off before, as somebody who has gone and created a business, as somebody who has had different careers and needed to like adjust course when they weren't working out, I now can speak on what's going on with how to handle those things because of lived experience. And so the value that I can bring as a speaker on that topic is lived experience. I can think of nothing worse than someone talking to me about something that they have not gone through. I really find that annoying if someone tries to educate me on something that they've never experienced or gone. And I'm supposed to, I guess I can gather some potential words of wisdom, but lived experience then spoken about is so powerful. And so it's a wonderful thing to be able to say like, okay, now I can speak on a range of topics that I've also been learned, lived experiences. That speaker journey is so interesting because as somebody who does get paid to speak, I remember like taking a lot of free gigs. I took a lot of free gigs. And then I remember like the first time, and I can remember typing it up on Facebook. It was Facebook message. And I remember saying, like typing the word, typing the words, it'll be $150 and thinking, okay, I hope they write back. I hope they take it. I hope they write back. And then they did. Right. And I remember thinking that was such a big deal. And now I get paid a lot more than that to speak. And I'm part of the Washington Speakers Bureau and all of that. But it's important for people to understand, I think, if those are whatever your goals are, is like a lot of us have maybe surround yourself with people who've already achieved that goal and then ask how they did it. Because I did a lot of stuff for free. I did 3 TEDx talks and, like I said yes to them at different parts of the country. And it helped build, but it's not, it was a journey to get where I am. So I'm excited for you. I think it's really cool. And I mean, if you don't want to share any more on it, because you said you weren't like ready to talk about it, we can talk about it offline, but it's a wonderful thing to be able to make a living speaking. I do obviously other things, but having that revenue stream has been very valuable to me.
Yeah, it's definitely, I'm not going to say I speak all the time paid gigs, but I'm right now really setting up the infrastructure for like, if I do something for free, which is not every day, not for a lot of people, that I can still make, some sort of profit off of the gig and the exposure. Because even though exposure doesn't pay the bills, it's actually like the thing that you have behind the business and behind the speaking that can generate that revenue. And so something, for example, like selling a course and saying, hey, anyone who, was at my talk today, I'm just going to use this as an example at WIT. If you DM me WIT 2023, then I will send you this free guide and resource, et cetera, which I also have obviously for WIT, the WIT community.
I think that's actually I think that's a real plug, isn't it? Well, can you do that?
Yeah, 100%.
She's not even pretending. She does have a plug for something that I think would be valuable for all of you. So tell them about it.
Yeah, basically it's a guide for how do you navigate transitions. How do you navigate transitions, but from an emotional standpoint, right? So I think one of the largest things and one of the biggest takeaways from going through a layoff was realizing, wow, I'm really okay. And obviously I went through the grief whole cycle, but I bounced back fairly quickly. And I think that's valuable. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
valuable to know, how do you set yourself up for success in that way? How do you build your confidence to the point where you're okay being laid off? Like 2 weeks later, like I essentially wasn't even thinking about my last job.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a lot of people, like, it takes longer to get over it. It's, for a lot of people, work is their identity and whatnot. And to some degree, that was true for me, but it wasn't my whole identity. Anyway, so there were a number of things
Mm.
and reasons why I was okay post layoff, to the point where I created a guide on how do you emotionally handle a layoff, and the 7 steps to doing so, which, if you DM me WIT 23, during, while you're watching this podcast, that on Instagram, of course, Instagram
Mhm.
or LinkedIn, that you can get for free, and I will send it to you.
Oh, that's,
So
thank you for
yeah.
offering that. No, I think that's awesome because I think there's so many people, young people and older people that listen to this that are going through transitions and or layoffs. And I think that there's obviously going to be something of value for all of them. So take advantage of it. Again, message her. Is your Instagram the same? Is it your full name?
Yeah, it's just my full name, Danielle
Okay.
Farage.
And then you can also find her on LinkedIn, message her WIT 23. Is that what it is? Okay.
It
WIT
is, yeah.
23. And she'll send you that free guide and take advantage of that. I mean, why not get some tips, or maybe, somebody who's going through something and you think it could bring them value, then you can do that too. That can be a gift. Sometimes you might not have the right words to support somebody who's going through something, but providing them a resource like this could really help them. So if that feels like the right choice for you, then you know how to reach out to her. See, okay, the time. It's already like we only have like 10 more minutes.
Crazy.
Okay, there's so many things I wanted to chat about, but I'm really grateful that it's taken this turn. It feels like this is really an important thing to be discussing. People don't discuss it enough, and I know we have an audience that'll benefit from it. So thank you for being open about this time for
Yeah.
you. And I know you've been open about it on LinkedIn a bit, so I knew it wasn't off topic if you're putting it out there in that way. Um, when we think about like your big like dream, when you imagine, because I think it's fun to dream and even speak our dreams, and I think they speak them into existence. You're on a stage. What are you talking about? Who's in the audience?
hmm Yeah. So I will answer this question, but I'm curious if I have permission to do a little bit of a guided meditation after,
You mean a guided meditation after you share it, or
for
do you
the
want?
audience,
Oh,
or
sure.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. So for me, I'll answer the question, then I'll do the guided meditation, because
Okay.
I found it really helpful in, like, personally envisioning what my future could look
Oh yeah,
like.
it's very powerful.
Yeah. So for me, when I think of my biggest dream, I'm on stage and I'm looking at, like the high point of whatever I'm speaking about, right? Whether it's like a book tour or it's a conference, where people are so excited, they're like on their feet and they feel so seen and cared for and elated and inspired by what I'm delivering. And I would say it has a lot to do with, how do you actually get to a place in life where you feel fulfilled, where you
Mm,
have something, you're able to every day, right? You're able to, whether it's you're doing it or you're progressing towards it, feeling like you're on the right path to fulfillment and meaning in your life. And that could be your career. It could also be outside of your job.
mm-hmm.
For me personally, it's, we work 90,000 hours of our lives. I want a career of fulfillment. I want a career of meaning. And I feel like a lot of people today would feel similarly. And so that's part of what I'm speaking about, right? It's like, how do you get to this place in life where you are fulfilled by what you're what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And also this, to speak to sort of like the feeling seen thing, I think there's a lot of parents out there, and maybe some of you are listening to this podcast, that feel a little bit helpless, like feel a little bit lost, and like they might have a kid that they don't exactly know how to relate to.
Mm-hmm.
They might be managing someone who's of a younger generation or a different age than them, who they don't know how to relate to or help. Um, and there's a certain level of like helplessness there. And I would say that when I speak and what I speak about, from a organizational standpoint, like when I go talk to organizations and leaders, it's like, I see you, I understand like why you're frustrated, and I can, empathize with you. And for them to feel seen, and also for them to leave with a little bit more clarity, and maybe something super tangible that they can go and try and do the next day, to feel more confident in their ability to handle, right? Like maybe a tougher situation, a tougher kid, a kid who's
Mm-hmm.
not motivated or inspired by much, to feel like they could be a better parent, a better, person, make an impact. Like I think all those feelings of like being able within yourself, like having the capability and like realizing your power, is what I want people to walk away with. So yeah, I hope I answered that question.
I mean, you did a little bit. I would push back to say, I like when I would want you to be even more specific on where you are and what you're doing, because those are great dreams to have. And they're hard to
Yeah.
say out loud. It's hard to say out loud. I want to be like, if I were to say it myself, like, I want to write a book that, and that becomes a New York Times bestseller. Well, I also know the entire machine behind how you make something a New York Times bestseller. Like I also know how that sausage gets made. So but let's just say it that way, like that it's a best-selling book because parents are buying it to read to understand their child more, and teens are buying it to read because they're like, oh my gosh, this is like, this help. She understands what I'm going through. She understands, she like gets it. She's an adult that gets it. And so here there's a book that's being read by both generations and serving them and building better relationships. And that teenager has this toolkit through this book that gets them through some of the toughest years of people's lives in high school,
Mm,
and gets them through. I can't guarantee unscarred because that's just life, but gets them through with their head held a little bit higher and a greater sense of direction and purpose. And I'll close my eyes and picture myself signing those books and the thing that I can imagine that I can feel in my body is the feeling of hugging those teens that show up, that I'm so happy to see them and I'm so grateful. And this is like a little woo woo, but it's in the hugging and supporting of a teenager. I experience the hugging and supporting of myself as a teenager. And it's like this beautiful thing to be able to say, like, I have created the thing that I wish I had when I was younger.
mm,
And I'm so excited for that moment. And I can picture myself and I can feel walking out of that New York City bookstore down that street. And it's like a chillier day. So I can feel that cold on my face. And I feel like I've hit a goal that I've wanted. And there's a deep sense of contentment and pride and satisfaction. So all kind of this is, I literally just like thought about this I just came up with this right now, right? But meaning that level of specificity is really
yeah.
fun to do. And that's to the listener, like allow yourself to do that. And guess what? Like this has happened. I have had these kinds of dreams before, desires. I really wanted to do a TEDx talk. I really wanted to do a like at South by Southwest EDU. Like there are things that I really wanted that were like specific things that I wanted. and I knew how I wanted to feel, and I would imagine it and I would picture it and I would feel it. And then I'd kind of like forget about it. Um, like I wasn't obsessing over it. And then I'm telling you, I can remember like walking out of this restaurant in Little Italy in San Diego after I had given my first TEDx talk. And it like hit me where I was like, oh, this was the thing that I was imagining, where it was done and I was with my family and I was proud of what I put out. I mean, it's just so interesting how this work, it doesn't mean that it's going to show up tomorrow, but the
Mhm.
visualizations, the meditations, and I can list tons of places that you can go to access some of them. They really help open up your mind to what is possible and give you permission to dream in a specific way. And like I said to you earlier, I think it is hard for people to say what they really want out loud. I think it's hard for someone to say that how much money they want to make, or because there's a bit of like, well, do I even deserve that? Like, is that too much? Is that too little? Is this, when you do these meditations in the quiet and the peace of your own home, dream big. That's the point of it.
Yeah.
There's no one around to be like, but Danielle, could you really do that? I mean, like, you haven't really done this yet. You haven't really done that yet. You give yourself permission. So that's what I would say is encouraging the listener or the viewer, like, if you're going to do these
Yeah.
things, get super specific and have fun with it.
I appreciate that. I think I probably answered it like in a way that I was more focusing on like what like that room specifically, like,
Yeah.
like what I've imagined before. But I would say, yeah, to everything you said, I was like, can you come to my vision boarding party in New York?
Oh, I host vision board.
Um,
I host vision board parties. I have a vision board. I'm right now in Tennessee, but I have a vision board in my place in San Diego. It's in my dressing
love it.
area. And it is, I'm very specific on that. And I will tell you, when I was back home, like last week, I was looking at it and I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
There are things like that have already happened this year. And one of my girlfriends messaged me. She just finished spending a month in Europe. Uh, that's what she wanted to do. She wanted to spend a month in Europe, the summer in Europe. And she messaged me and she's like, good thing I put it on the vision board, cause I was like, it came true. Like, now she works hard. I mean, this isn't about just like throwing things up there and being like, and then this magic fairy dust is going to come and do that. I mean, she made some very strategic business decisions to give her that space to do that. But I'm big on vision boards. I'm big on a lot of things that are around this space. The meditations, the tapping, the EFT, like all that stuff.
Yeah.
I like Joe Dispenza. I do a lot of his meditations. So I'm big on that.
Love that. Yeah. And that's exactly, that's the dream,
Mhm.
what you described. And I think if I were to say, any like final words to, this
Mhm.
audience, it's the seeds that you're planting now
Mhm.
and the activities you're doing now are going to be so much a part of who you are in the future. And the skills you're developing around whether it's failure or it's trying something new, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, making, fast decisions. I mean, like everything you're learning
Mhm.
also from a business standpoint, just learning
Mhm.
about entrepreneurship is going to serve you so much. And I know that when I was younger and in high school and even in college, I would constantly question like, why am I doing a cappella? Like, why am I doing student government? Like, why do I care? And why am I putting this time in? And I think when I look back now, I'm like so grateful for the time that
Mhm.
I put in, even though it came at a cost, as everything does, of having less time, not being able to do a club team in New York City for volleyball,
Mhm.
but choosing to do these extracurriculars made me who I am and end up being things that I fall back on to be able to pull strength, right? And be resilient and know what my next step is, or at least try something new.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, like don't doubt what you're doing now because what you're doing now is really important, regardless of if it's the atypical way of doing
Mm-hmm.
things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
you
that's what I would
definitely,
say.
you are reassuring. I know you are going to be reassuring our listener, especially our teen listener, on the value of the work that they're putting in right now, paying off and in the long run. And this happened on the first episode of our back to school series. I asked this question and I loved the responses so much that I've been asking it on every episode I've recorded since. And so if you could put yourself back in high school, okay, and tomorrow morning you're going back to school for the school year, what would you pack in your like metaphorical backpack? What are three things that you'd want to make sure that you took with you into the school year?
Hmm. I love that question. It's so good. I think I would pack, the first thing that came to mind was like my relationships with my teachers and how I think I underappreciated the value of teachers, especially in college. Like the fact that your professors have actually gotten to a level in life, more specifically professors, but I think high school teachers also, like they've gotten to a level of life where like they have so much knowledge that they can spend all of their time teaching, or a lot of their time teaching
Mm-hmm.
and imparting that knowledge and wisdom. And so when I think about the manifestation of what that might look like, it's a business card.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be LinkedIn. I think it's just like showing the extra effort of like, I made this thing. I have business cards, not because, my target audience uses them. Maybe some of them do, but because it shows like, hey, like I made the time to do this unnecessary thing that might be old world and ubiquitous, but to give it to you.
Mm-hmm.
So like that level of thoughtfulness and also like
Mm-hmm.
showcasing who you are and what you've done. That's one thing I would pack. Um, Another thing I would pack would, and I'm making this up on the spot.
Yeah, it's
Um,
supposed to be.
like totally. I would definitely pack like a good snack, like a good lunch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To be honest, I think when I was in high school, full disclosure, I was developing an eating disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people struggle with that. Especially when you get to my age, like you realize how many people have actually struggled
Oh
with eating
yeah.
disorders. And I used to like only eat like green beans for lunch, or like pack like a Quest bar, those like really low
Mm-hmm.
calorie protein bars that are just full of chemicals. And that was all I would eat for the whole day. And that's not okay. Like we
Mm-hmm.
need vegetables, we need proteins and carbs and all of it. We need healthy fats, and water. Always drinking water. So yeah, that's another one I would add. Um, and third of all, probably a journal. I know that's lame, but I think having this almost daily for me practice of gratitude is huge.
Mm-hmm.
I've said this for so many years, but I think when you have a practice of gratitude, you're able to, again, going back to like earlier conversation, navigate those lower moments, because
Mm-hmm.
you actually have spent the time and built the muscle of appreciating what you have, so that when you're kind of experiencing a low, or you get a bad grade, or you don't get an internship you want, you kind of are able to be like, oh well, that's whatever, because I have all this in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so whether that looks like practicing gratitude and in a journal, or it's just saying it to yourself in the morning, or it's a prayer,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it looks like, I think just like having some semblance of gratitude is really important and a huge skill. It's hard to do it daily. So that's why I'll say it's almost daily, but yeah, it's important.
I love that. And I love that I'm thinking about our listeners now understanding that the value of building those relationships with your teachers seeing them as human beings, many of them who have chosen to be there, right? I know that they're not always great teachers. I know that for sure, having been a teacher. But keep your eye out for those really great teachers because they want to help you, and take them up on their extra help in those office hours and the time that they're going to give you. And fueling yourself, fueling your body, and is so important. I similarly had an eating disorder in high school, and it, yeah, oh my God, the amount of time and energy and focus that it took from my life is pretty sad, honestly. And if you can hear Danielle's words of wisdom about fueling your body and your brain in good, strong ways, that's a wonderful thing to take into the school year. And I would add, try not to engage in those conversations with people who are saying that they're going to be, quote, good today, or I'm being bad today. And let's, all that kind of talk around food. Pretend that your mom's calling you on your phone and leave. Like, just if it's hard to say, like, I don't want to participate in that conversation, which would be hard for me to say as a teenager, find a way out of them, because those aren't serving your heart or your soul. And then I love that idea of a gratitude practice. And friends, you can do that in a journal. You can do that on your phones, on the notes section. You can send yourself a text message of 3 things that you're grateful for during the day. So Danielle, those are such wonderful reminders of things to pack in our backpacks as we head back into the school year. We are coming up on time, and you had mentioned doing a meditation. So there's 2 things that we can do. You can do it now, or you can record something that we can send out, or you can post it, or they can, if they message you WIT 23, you can send it to them. There's a couple options there. What sounds good to you?
I have to hop for a dinner, but why don't we do that? If you want a meditation around manifesting your dreams and imagining yourself, it's really what it is. It's a confidence meditation. And it's really about, confidence and courage. So if you want that, DM me WIT 23 and then write like what you want. Basically it's like, either you want, I could give you everything, which is both the guide for navigating transitions, but it's also could be the meditation. So just let me know what you want. And yeah, this was so awesome. Thank you so much for having me. And I hope that, if you're listening, you got something out of this conversation. I definitely did. And feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's Danielle Farage, like garage with an F, and same on Instagram.
Well, thank you again for being here. I know that everybody found at least one thing that you're going to take with you, having listened to this podcast or watched this podcast. We would love it if you would make the choice to share this podcast, this episode, on your Instagram, on your LinkedIn. Tell us what your takeaways were. Tag us, tag Danielle. It's a great way to say thank you to our guest by sharing their message and sharing their work. And it's a free way to support our podcast and our guests. So thank you in advance for doing that. Thank you, Danielle, for being here. And everyone, just remember to keep doing